And let me explain why we know this is the best choice. We're going to look at some of the wording. She said, we were first equal, Mary and I. We curtsied. I remember. So we can see a lot of things about memory and remembering. They went. So it's the past, right? When we look back at something, we're reflecting. 10 years later. And then she literally tells you she's reflecting. She says, I think of those prizes that were ours for the taking and wonder when the choices got made we don't remember making. So here this whole statement is really telling you that she's being reflective of the past. So that's going to be our best understanding of the tone from this poem. And you can see how I've talked that out. And this is the kind of processing that you want to use in your mind while you're looking at these kind of answers. And you're going to do it much more quickly than this, particularly after you practice and think about the things we've talked about, because you're not going to want to spend the amount of time that we're discussing when you're actually taking the exam. But here you're going to learn. That's why we're talking about these tips and these tricks and recognizing these things, so that you can learn how to do them quickly when you do take the exam. So let's look at another question. In this question, you're asked to rewrite a report in a more formal way. So it gives you some information and it asks you to give one word to replace the following colloquial expressions. Well, the first thing you need to ask yourself is what colloquial means. If I do not know, then I can determine from the question that a colloquial word or expression is one that's not formal, right? Because it asks you to write something in a more formal way. So even if I don't know what colloquial means, then I do know that it's the opposite of formal, right? So it's something that you're going to be using in conversation, right? And I understand this because the question gives us a hint. It says rewrite in a more formal way. And then I can also recognize that by looking at the words that they've asked us to rewrite. Matey, shaky. All right, so if we look at the lines that this information is found on. So let's look first at line 36. But to get it right takes a lot of input, positivity, and encouragement. Most boys respond well to a good matey, sometimes physical approach. It does not matter whether teachers are male or female. So here's the statement from the report. So we can say, good matey. All right, so that we recognize that's a colloquial thing. So if we want to provide a response that is more formal, then we need to think about what that means, right? So when we're talking about matey, we're talking about boys, right? So the boys are who we need to be discussing. How do I know that matey is talking about boys? Well, I know this because it says most boys respond to a good matey, sometimes physical approach. So that means a matey would be a term to talk, a very informal term to talk about boys, right? So understanding this meaning is going to give me a more formal way of saying that. So instead of saying good matey, we might say good boy. All right, let's look at the word shaky. Let's read the sentence that has to do with that. Pupils' self-belief is the driving force of their achievement. Dresden says, boys' self-belief is shaky because society keeps putting them down. I'm not saying stop urging girls on, but stop putting boys down. All right, so let's look at that. All right, if something is shaky, that means it's not steady, right? It's not strong. So we can check the meaning for that by understanding that it's not stable. It's unstable. It's in flux. It's moving, right? If we have a table that's shaky, that means that when you touch it, the legs move. It sort of wobbles, right? So in this sense, with people's self-belief being shaky, it means it's not strong. So in the question, we recognize that shaky means unstable. And how can we address that is the question that they want us to use. So we might take that meaning and use it properly and say boys' self-belief is unstable because society keeps putting them down. So that's a way of being more formal in the statement. You can look back and see our responses. Most boys respond well to a good boy, sometimes physical approach. You can see that that kind of statement sounds much more formal than good matey. You can see that boys' self-belief is shaky because society keeps putting them down. It sounds very informal. It's sort of a conversational approach. But if we say boys' self-belief is unstable because society keeps putting them down, then we have more of a clear, formal statement. And both of these have very varied usage in speaking. But this question is asking us to rewrite in a more formal way, so we're looking at a more proper, formal way of speaking these things. So let's look at a question that asks us about pronouns. All right, look at how the pronouns below are used and briefly explain what they refer to in the article. All right, so we're going to read the part of the article. We're going to see what the pronoun is. It tells us where to look. So going back, we're going to see paragraph 1, line 10. Boys educationalists like Dr. Paul Baker of Waitaki Boys High School and educational consultant Joseph Dresden believe boys' education is on a slippery slope, that without research into the issues and ways to put it right, society could pay dearly. All right, if we look at that statement from the paragraph, then we recognize that the thing they're referring to, is the education of boys, right? Because it tells us educationalist, education consultant, boys' education. All of these statements tell us that what they're talking about are the education that boys are dealing with, right? So next we're going to look at paragraph 7, line 73, and we're going to look at the pronoun they. Dresden agrees with the top level of governance in education is continuing to die on the problem. I'm very sad at the lack of leadership at the top government level. They are insisting on perpetrating a strong social imbalance, which is gradually becoming a crisis. So let's look at some words that tell us they. Who are they referring to when they say they? Well, we look at it and it says they disagree that the top level of governance. It's very sad that the lack of leadership at the top level of government are perpetuating that strong social imbalance, causing crisis. All right, all these statements tell us what is the they they're referring to. They are referring to the government, the top level government, the leadership. All right, so these are some of the questions that are multiple choice and short answer from the HKDSE exam. We hope that you find these videos helpful, and we hope that you will seek out one of our fantastic tutors at highhelpo.com. Help is only a few clicks away. Make an appointment today with an online expert. See you next time. Bye.